March, 1948. A British military train leaves Berlin and stops in the Soviet zone of occupied Germany. It should be just a routine check by the Red Army guards. Only 3 years before, these allies together destroyed Berlin. America and Britain from the air. The Soviets in a final brutal advance against desperate German resistance. Tonight, against all agreements, the Soviets want to check every passenger. They're increasingly obstructing movement through their zone. The British reject the Soviet demands. If they can't travel freely, they won't travel at all. The train returns to Berlin. Since 1945, Berlin lies deep inside the Soviet zone of occupied Germany. A road and a railway line are all that connect it with the West. The four powers, the US, Britain, France, and Russia, each control their own sector of the city and have millions of people to keep alive. In the former Nazi capital, the sectors are just lines on the road. But the city is in limbo. The four powers can't agree what to do with it. The West want to revive the German economy and get business going. The East want communist planning throughout their zone. The black market has moved in to fill the void, and it has brought its own currency. For Allied security forces, it's just a holding operation. Sam Young, a military policeman from the Midwest, is witness to the aftermath of war.
You saw nothing but destruction. Wherever you looked, all around. It was terrible. And an 18-year-old kid, that was really apprehensive. Because I had never seen anything like that before.
Whole sections of the city are reduced to rubble. Clearing it has become the main occupation. What shocks a young American is daily life for the Berliners. But through the eyes of young Sibylla Grieser, herself just up from the country, the capital still has its attractions.
Es war schwer, ein Zimmer zu bekommen und es war noch viel zerstört. Es sah eigentlich traurig aus, aber nicht so traurig wie mein Heim, wie Querfurt. Berlin war die Großstadt für mich. Ich nehme an, alles, was ich sah, war neu.
While Berliners and their occupiers try to make the best of it, the younger Berliners have more basic concerns. 3 years after the war, food is still in short supply. As the invaders work to win the hearts and minds of the population, this one factor proves more important than any other.
Das Beste war die Kekssuppe, die die Amerikaner verteilten. Und dann musste man ja auch noch ein kleines Essgefäß dabei haben, ne? Ja, so einen halben Kanister ohne Deckel. Andere hatten einen Deckel, die haben dann sich das Essen noch einmal auffüllen lassen und es mit nach Hause genommen. Für die Mutter, für die Geschwister. Es war die einzige warme Mahlzeit manchmal, die wir hatten.
But Germany can't be kept on the breadline forever. In Moscow, Joseph Stalin wants full control, at least of his half of Germany. The presence of the Western Allies in Berlin is a thorn in his side. Harassment is the order of the day. The Allied Kommandatura runs Berlin. As long as the Western powers are in the city, the Soviets can't create a communist economy in the whole of their zone. And they're convinced the Allies are plotting something behind their backs. On the 16th of June, they pull out of the Kommandatura and declare it illegal. They're right to be worried. On June the 20th, the Allies issue a new currency, the Deutschmark, in Western Germany. On June the 23rd, the Soviets announce that they will do the same for their zone and throughout Berlin. But the West have already smuggled 250 million Deutschmarks to the city. The Soviets have lost the race. But they have prepared a counter-move. 23rd of June, 1948. A secret order made 6 days ago is confirmed. By dawn on the 24th, Berlin is cut off from the West. Autobahns and railway lines are closed for urgent repairs. No coal, no food gets through.
Es war so, dass meine Mutter ganz aufgeregt war und sagte, jetzt kriegen wir nichts mehr zu essen, die haben alles blockiert, ja, und ich konnte mir unter Blockierung nichts vorstellen, ne? Es war richtig der Begriff Blockade von Anfang an. Und die Worte meiner Großmutter, nur nicht russisch werden, die werde ich nie vergessen.
Berlin's power station is in the east.
Also es war so eine Stimmung wie bei einer Sonnenfinsternis, ja. Keiner wusste, was ist los. Die Amerikaner nicht wir. Wir haben dann gefragt, was macht ihr? Die haben gesagt, wir haben unseren Seesack gepackt.
There are 20,000 American, British and French troops in Berlin. It's a ceremonial presence, enough to police the Allied sectors, but totally inadequate to defend them against a Soviet attack. Across the Atlantic, President Truman is in the middle of an election campaign which he is expected to lose. His response is forthright.
What the world needs in order to regain a sense of security is an end to Soviet obstruction and aggression.
But back in the White House, security officials give him sobering news. Berlin has just 36 days food and 45 days coal. He can't defend the city. But to withdraw would be disastrous for America's image and for his own hopes of re-election. Truman's military governor in Germany, General Lucius D. Clay, suggests they call Stalin's bluff. He proposes sending an armored column along the road to Berlin. Truman knows this means the imminent threat of a war neither side can afford, but he decides not to abandon the city. We stay in Berlin, period. There is one last option. The Russians haven't closed the air corridors to Berlin. If they want to stop Allied planes, they will have to shoot them down. And that puts the pressure on the Russians. But no one knows if you can supply 2 million people with food and fuel by air. The only ones who can tell the Americans are the British. They're used to rationing. They've already had nearly 10 years of it. In days, the calculations are completed. 1,700 calories a day per person, as much as possible in powdered or dehydrated form, to make it easier to transport. That means 1,500 tons of food a day. Add another 2,500 tons of coal and gasoline. That's 4,000 tons per day. The load of the Western workhorse, the C-47 Dakota, is just 3 tons. By all rational thinking, as the Soviets and the Allies both realize, it can't be done. Nevertheless, it starts. The first flights are a spectacle, reported live to the city by RIAS, Berlin's radio in the American sector.
In diesem Augenblick kommt die große Lockheed Sunderland-Maschine, viermotorige, über die...
Berliners come out in their thousands to watch RAF flying boats lazily dip onto the city's bathing lakes. They're carrying salt. No other aircraft can, because it would corrode their fuselage. Berlin has an elected mayor, Ernst Reuter. He's a former communist, but the Soviets have kept him from office. He calls a rally to reassure bewildered citizens and keep up their morale.
Berlin wird nicht drankommen. Wir werden uns mit allen Mitteln, über die wir hier verfügen, bis zum Äußersten gegen den Machtanspruch wenden, der uns zu Sklaven, der uns zu Eloten einer Partei machen will.
General Clay summons Reuter to ask a crucial question.
Indem ihm die Härten für die Bevölkerung, zumindest am Anfang, darlegte und auch klar machte, dass er könne nicht garantieren, ob das überhaupt möglich wäre, war noch nie in der Geschichte versucht worden, eine Stadt aus der Luft zu versorgen. Ob denn die Berliner 3 Jahre nach Kriegsende das aushalten würden, da habe Reuter nur ganz kurz gesagt, "You take care of the airlift, I'll take care of the Berliners."
American and British transport planes fly to Germany from all over the world. Powdered eggs and milk, flour and coal begin to make their way to Berlin. Lieutenant Gail Halverson is based in Mobile, Alabama. It's an easy life.
And so I had a 4-door, brand new Chevrolet car. Just before the airlift started. This was in early '48. And so then I was doing big time. And I called a girl for a date. She said, well, then take her in the car. She said, wow, this is pretty neat. New car. Very few new cars then. And that was the car when I got the telephone call about the airlift. I didn't have time to do anything with it. I just drove it under the pine trees of the airbase in Brooklyn, took the keys, and left the car there. I never saw it again.
As Halverson flies in over the enemy's land, a mission of mercy is the last thing on his mind.
My feelings for the Germans were not very good. I mean, Hitler started this thing. He caused all this chaos. He caused one of my buddies to get shot down. I don't know where he is yet. They never find his body. So I didn't have good feelings about the Germans.
Berliners, too, are cautious. The sound of planes overhead brings back terrible memories.
Wir haben sehr viele Fliegerangriffe miterlebt in der Wohnung. Und dieser Schall der Flugzeuge, die über dieses Haus hinweg flogen, dieser gewisse Klang, der kam dann auf einmal wieder. Und damit kam für mich die Angst wieder, dass wieder Bomben fallen würden.
Halverson makes his first landing at Berlin's Tempelhof Airport.
I had 20,000 pounds of flour on my airplane, 20,000 pounds of flour, and landed at Tempelhof, and I wondered what these supermen are going to look like. You know, all this propaganda thing built up through the years, to come face to face with them. The back doors of my airplane opened, and about 8 Germans came piling into the back of that airplane. And that first man, the first 3 or 4 came up, straight up to me, and put out their hand. And their eyes were moist. And I didn't understand what they said, but I could understand their feeling immediately. They looked at the flower and looked back at me like I was an angel from heaven.
In Moscow, Stalin is confident it's only a matter of time. He's certain it's impossible for the West to keep the city fed from the air. Truman decides on a gesture to show that the Allies mean business. He sends 60 B-29 bombers to England. No one knows if they're carrying nuclear weapons, but Truman has used them before, and Stalin has none of his own. For the airlift pilots, the pressure mounts. Supplies reaching Berlin have already increased tenfold, but it's not enough. On the 26th of June, they carried just 90 tons. 2 weeks later, they reached 1,000 tons, still just 1/5 of the daily minimum. And the organization is chaotic.
I came into over Tempelhof, and the weather was very bad. And suddenly, coming the other direction into the homing beacon was another C-54, right at my altitude. We just almost hit propellers. I could see the pilot's eyes just coming the other way.
Und da hörte ich dann erst normales Motorengeräusch, dann ein Aufziehen des Motors, ein Hochziehen im Geräusch und dann ein Knall und dann absolute Stille.
It's the first accident of many. The skies are too crowded, the men in the machines overworked. It would take an organizational genius to sort it out. On the 28th of July 1948, General William Tunner arrives in Berlin. In the Second World War, his transport planes flew over the Himalayas to supply anti-communist forces in China. Saving Berlin couldn't be too difficult. Tunner's plan is to make each of the 3 Allied air corridors a one-way route, 2 going in, 1 coming out. Planes would fly 3 minutes apart simultaneously at 5 levels. On a clear day, you would see the aircraft above and below, in front and behind you. I want rhythm, Tunner said, on a beat as constant as jungle drums. Soon the targets are hit, then exceeded. More than 1,500 flights a day, more than 4,500 tons delivered. By now it takes planes just 7 minutes to unload. They stay no longer than 30 minutes on the ground. And you only have 1 chance to land. If you fail, you return to the west fully loaded. And Tunner insists that the pilots stay close to their planes on the ground. He makes sure that coffee and hot food is waiting for them on the runway.
But it wasn't just the coffee, and it wasn't just the hamburgers. In my case, I drank hot chocolate, those good things, but he put some beautiful German Fräuleins in that snack bar. They knew we couldn't date them, we had no time, so they're very friendly. And first thing we do is get a big smile, and then worry about the hamburger and the hot chocolate later.
The Soviets can't interfere directly with the flights. So a keen propaganda war breaks out.
Die Musik kennen wir doch. Denkt mal nach. Wie war das doch? Damals kamen die Menschenfreunde mit Bomben und Phosphor.
The British take a different tack.
Nicht mehr Nacht und noch nicht Tag. Und mit der aufsteigenden Sonne rüsten Bomber zum Fluge. Bomber, einst die Boten des Todes. Heute, im Sommer 1948, Diener des Lebens und der Freiheit.
But the Americans have a secret weapon. The CIA-controlled Rias radio station. They play all the music the Nazis had banned for 12 years. Jazz, swing and country music are the beginning of a love affair between Western Germany and America. It will last a generation. The Soviets roll out their big guns. But dancing Cossacks can't blot out the horrors of the Soviet takeover in 1945. Berliners will never see Stalin as Germany's best friend. On the ground in Berlin, things are getting hotter. On September the 6th, East German communists occupy the city's civilian council house to block the new elections which they know they will lose. Three days later, Rias calls out the Western population for a counter-demonstration.
Achtung, Achtung, hier ist Rias, Berlin.
The crowds gather at the Brandenburg Gate, next to the Reichstag, the ruined German parliament. The airlift may be working so far, but West Berliners are terrified the Allies are going to sell them out to the Russians. Addressing a quarter of the population, 500,000 people, Ernst Reuter makes the speech of his life.
Ihr Völker der Welt, ihr Völker in Amerika, in England, in Frankreich, schaut auf diese Stadt und erkennt, dass ihr diese Stadt und dieses Volk nicht preisgeben dürft, nicht preisgeben könnt.
Lifted by Reuter's rhetoric, the crowd surges towards the eastern sector, a few hundred yards away through the Brandenburg Gate. Someone rips down the red flag, the sacred symbol of Soviet victory. People are injured. A young demonstrator is killed by Soviet bullets. Eastern policemen are now the target of the crowd's fury. 3 months of helplessness, fear, and anger are taking their toll. Across the city, the children are still having fun. They're taking it all in their stride.
Mensch, bei dem Wetter willst du starten? Na klar, Mensch, die Berliner warten auf mir.
It may be a game to them, but for the Allies, it's a sign they're winning over the young generation. At Tempelhof Airport, the real airlift draws children like a magnet. Groups of boys gather at the perimeter, waiting for a special plane.
I wiggled the wings of the airplane. They went crazy. I could still see their arms and hands up to the sky. And just went mad.
Halvorsen starts dropping candy to the children by parachute. It becomes the biggest public relations coup of the airlift. Gail Halvorsen is its hero.
Before I got donations from the big candy companies, the children of America were sending me donations and sending money so we could go to the base exchange and buy the things to drop to the children of Berlin.
But one little girl wants something special.
Ich habe ihn Schokoladenonkel bezeichnet und habe geschrieben, ja, lieber Schokoladenonkel, du fliegst jeden Tag über Friedenau. Bitte wirf einen Fallschirm ab über dem Garten, wo die weißen Hühner sind. Die haben auch aufgehört zu legen.
They think you're a chicken hawk. And the eggs aren't coming anymore, and their feathers are falling out. And then the last part of the letter, she said, when you see the white chickens, drop it there.
Es ist in Ordnung, wenn du mal einen Fallschirm abwirfst, du kannst sie auch ruhig treffen. Deine Mercedes.
I told my buddies who were dropping it, I said, when you come over Temple, to land Temple, drop on the approach at apartment houses wherever you see them. We got to hit Mercedes. We didn't hit Mercedes. Took a big patch of gum and candy to Berlin, mailed it to Mercedes.
Schokolade war okay. Aber das Wichtigste war der Brief. Er hatte ja geantwortet. Ich hatte ja einen Brief geschrieben, also erwarte ich auch eine Antwort, ne? Und den Brief, den habe ich aufgehoben. Das war so toll.
Dear Mercedes, if I did a couple of circuits over Friedenau, I'm sure I'd find the garden with the white chickens. But I'm afraid I haven't got the time. I hope that you will enjoy the enclosed. Your chocolate uncle, Gail Halverson.
Mein Vater ist als Pilot im Krieg geblieben, vermisst. Und ich habe dann diesen Schokoladenonkel als meinen Vater angesehen, der mir zeigt, dass er da ist, ja? Entschuldigung.
October 1948. The flights continue through the days and nights. But as winter comes, more food will be needed and demand for fuel will rocket. General Clay holds a press conference.
We are not going to be forced out of Berlin.
Will you be able to continue the present air supply indefinitely?
We will increase it, and we can continue it indefinitely.
To prove it, the Allies employ 18,000 Berliners, half of them women, to build a new airport in just 2 months. But that isn't enough. The airlift is ravenous for men as well as materials. Former bomber pilot Ken Slaker is called out of civilian life in the US. He's supposed to be doing a ground intelligence job, but he's pressed into emergency service on night flights. It should be a routine.
We just went 20 minutes into eastern Germany when we lost both engines simultaneously and went through emergency procedures. We couldn't get them started again. So I just bailed out. I said to myself, this is it. When I got my memory back and it was daylight, and then I heard a noise, and it was the sound of a airlift aircraft overhead. So I knew where I was. Listening, I was right on the route to Berlin. I realized I was in a real trouble. I ran face to face with a German. I told him, "Where's Fulda?" He says, "Fulda 9 good." I says, "Fulda's good for me. I'm an American pilot on the airlift." And when I said that, he had immediate respect for me. He opened his coat and pulled out some papers, and they were his discharge papers from the American prisoner for 2 years, so we were able to communicate.
Risking his freedom, Rudolf Schnabel takes Slaker back to his own home.
Ich habe dann das bisschen Essen gemacht und sagen, komm, habe ich gesagt, komm, ess mit, gell. Und wollte erst nicht, hat gesagt, habt ihr selber nichts, gell. Dann habe ich gesagt, komm, wohl 2 satt, wenn ja noch 3 satt. Er war ein sehr gut aussehender Mann und war wie aus einem Ei gepellt. So tipptopp, hat die Uniform, alles. Ken hat sich sehr nett von mir verabschiedet. Und mein Mann auch, und da haben wir uns noch ein bisschen gedrückt, haben wir gesagt, wir hoffen, dass alles gut geht. Und da habe ich gesagt, bete ein kleines Vaterunser, dann wird es schon gut gehen. Und dann hat er gesagt, bete auch eins, dann geht's gut.
Schnabel makes contact with escape agents.
They told us what we had to do to get through the border. That they buy, and I gave them some Westmarks. They bought off the East German policeman who was on the bridge of the river from 8 to 8:30 when the Soviet Guard changed. Well, my heart was in my mouth when we started across the bridge because that German policeman come straight towards us, and about 2 meters from us he stopped, turned around and ignored us, so he'd been paid off.
Just before the border, they meet up with other would-be escapers.
So we started up the incline. My back was killing me. I got halfway up the ridge. My back gave out, and I fell and rolled back down to the bottom. And the girl said, "The captain has fallen." And they stopped. They came back down there, and they pulled me up that incline. If they had not done that, I would not be here.
Schnabel is not so lucky. On the return journey, he's captured and interrogated for weeks by the communist authorities. He gives nothing away. After the airlift, Slaker is able to help him and Magdalena leave their homeland behind and escape to the west. Winter, the Russians' ally against their great enemies in the past. Their final hope to break the airlift. There are days when no planes can fly. The airlift can no longer supply Berliners' growing needs. Fuel has to be found wherever it can. Great ingenuity is called for to keep the electricity going. And finding fresh meat is even more of a challenge.
Großmutter hat mal einen Spatz für mich gefangen, den ich vorher lebend durch die Wohnung habe flitzen sehen, also fliegen sehen. Und dann den Mittag gab es Fleischbeilage, so ein ganz kleines Stückchen Knochen mit Fleisch. Und da wusste ich, ist der Spatz. Den habe ich nicht gegessen.
The Eastern authorities counter with a new campaign. They think it's irresistible. Eastern Europe can easily satisfy all of West Berlin's needs for fresh food, as long as Westerners transfer their ration cards to the other side.
So hat seit dem 1. August jede Berliner Hausfrau die Möglichkeit, gleichgültig in welchem Sektor sie wohnt, ihre Lebensmittelkarten im sowjetischen Sektor anzumelden, wo sie voll beliefert werden. Die Versorgung der Millionenbevölkerung Berlins ist durch die Lieferungen aus der Sowjetunion, Polen und der Tschechoslowakei voll gesichert.
Sensing a trick, few take up the offer. But if you couldn't go yourself, there was always a way around it.
Irgendwie hat meine Mutter es geschafft, dass sie da einen Berechtigungsschein oder eine Karte erworben hat. Auf jeden Fall schickte sie mich dann rüber nach Ostberlin, Alexanderplatz. Und ich musste dann, da gab es eine große Markthalle, das sehe ich heute noch vor Augen, und da habe ich Brot geholt. Habe Brot geholt und jedes Mal hat meine Mutter mich fast bekniet und gesagt, also bitte beiß das Brot nicht an. Und ich habe es zu meiner Schande, muss ich gestehen, nie geschafft. Ja, ich brachte immer ein Brot nach Hause, das ich ein paar Mal unterwegs angebissen hatte. So groß war der Hunger.
December 1948. Posters go up for the new municipal elections. The Eastern authorities once more organize spontaneous demonstrations against them. The communists boycott the polls and appoint their own mayor for the Russian sector, only until true democracy is re-established throughout the city. Friedrich Ebert rules for 19 years. In the western sectors, the vote goes ahead. The political division of Berlin is now complete. The Soviets have achieved what they least wanted. Ernst Reuter is re-elected. This time there's no one to prevent him taking office.
The people of Berlin wants nothing else than to be a free people. No dictatorship will stop our free election.
Many Berlin families, their husbands and fathers in Soviet prison camps, are just scraping through. In between the power cuts, they turn to the radio for news.
Meine Mutter hat sehr unter dem Verlust ihres Mannes gelitten. Und natürlich war es für sie wichtig, möglichst an eine Quelle heranzukommen, um zu erfahren, wie es ihrem Mann geht. Und immer, wenn der Rias Berlin sich meldete, ich glaube, es war so gegen 9:30, immer an Anschluss an die Nachrichten kam:
Jetzt spricht die Kampfgruppe gegen Unmenschlichkeit. Wir wissen, dass viele in der sowjetisch besetzten...
Und denen gaben also bekannt Nachrichten aus den verschiedenen Lagern.
Dass sie einen dunklen Punkt in ihrer Vergangenheit haben.
Und eines Tages war es auch so, ich wurde abends dann von meiner Mutter in das Waschbecken gestellt mit 8 Jahren und abgeschrubbt. Das werde ich das auch mein Leben nicht vergessen. Und dabei hörte sie Rundfunk.
Wir wissen weiter, dass viele nur zum Schein für ihre Aufgabe...
Und dann eines Tages meldete sich wieder die Kampfgruppe gegen Unmenschlichkeit. Und da sagte sie, der Baurat, eine Stimme, der Baurat, Diplom-Ingenieur Günther Richardi, ist im Konzentrationslager Neubrandenburg gestorben. Das hat meine Mutter völlig unvorbereitet gehört. Die Reaktion natürlich war ein einziger Aufschrei. Und das war für sie also katastrophal.
Wir informieren Sie weiter.
January 1949. At last the British have caught on to the PR potential of the airlift. They begin to use their empty planes to take Berlin children out to the west. RAF pilot John Irving Eddy prepares for a night flight to Lübeck. One of his 22 passengers is 10-year-old Peter Zimmermann.
Ich erinnere mich, es war stundenlange Wartezeiten, 4-5 Stunden oder sowas. Und es hieß immer, die Maschine ist noch nicht da oder die Maschine muss noch repariert werden, da muss gewartet werden und so weiter. Also ich glaube nicht, dass wir direkt Angst hatten. Zumindest ich nicht und meine Schwester bestimmt nicht, die hat das gar nicht so mitbekommen.
For Irvin Eddy, it's his third return trip of the day. It's a cold, wet night. For the passengers, it's the first flight of their lives.
Coming back from Berlin, as far as the flight was concerned, the takeoff and everything was normal. There was no. It wasn't until we got towards Lübeck itself that they told us that there was this full cloud cover and how far it was from the ground, from the airfield surface. And they said, well, the instruction was to descend and do a visual circuit. And when we broke cloud, it was inky black. There was not a sign of a light or anything.
Es war ein leichtes Schrammen. Und dann war es kurz dahinter ein stärkerer Schrammen, wieder ein Schrammen.
But unfortunately, the trees stretched up to 300 feet, and we hit them. As far as I know, I pushed the throttles forward, but we didn't get away.
Ich kann mich nur noch erinnern an diesen letzten großen Knall und dann das Aufflammen des Treibstoffs.
And the next thing I knew, I was lying on my back on the ground, looking up at the sky and seeing all the stars, which was ridiculous because it was full cloud cover, but I could see every star in the sky.
Peter Zimmermann is pulled from the wreckage by fellow passengers.
Man kann sich das gar nicht schlimm genug vorstellen. Völliges Chaos, völlige Hilflosigkeit. Es lagen Fetzen des Flugzeuges herum, das Flugzeug brannte, es roch natürlich ganz schrecklich. Und das Allerschrecklichste war dieser Geruch, den man heute kennt von Cevapcici, das war gebratenes Menschenfleisch.
Peter's mother and sister are killed in the crash. But such accidents are rare. Nothing can hold up the airlift. Especially now, a strange new alliance has emerged. Former Luftwaffe Sergeant Walter Riggers is hard at work for the old enemy.
Das kann ich heute noch nicht fassen. Dass man so kurz nach dem Krieg sagen kann, so, jetzt kommt mal her. Also ich weiß nicht, wo die die Gedanken hergenommen haben oder dies zutrauen. Das läuft, das geht. Ich weiß das nicht.
But that guy up there's a German. He used to work on a Luftwaffe airplane, and now he's working on my airplane. Here this man that supported the fighters against us or transports whatever else is now working on our plane. And we said, wow, it's a crazy world, you know?
Ja, das war bewiesenes Vertrauen. Nicht einfach sagen, ja, wir vertrauen nicht, sondern es war bewiesenes. Macht was. Nicht? Und wir haben es ja gemacht.
These guys were good. And they learned the American system and very quickly, and it was a good partnership. Ein gutes Mannschaft gehabt.
And the US aircraft industry is turning out bigger and bigger planes. Giants like the C-74 Globemaster carry 25 tons. So does the brand new C-97 Stratofreighter. That's the same as 8 Dakotas. On Easter Sunday 1949, General Tunner sets the airlift record. 1,383 flights, 13,000 tons of supplies in a single day. The point is made. Low-key talks at the UN in New York soon create a breakthrough. The airlift has become an embarrassment to the Soviets. In a concession to the Russians, Clay is sent home on May the 3rd, 1949. They can claim he's been sacked. Russian newsreels do not show his ticker tape reception in New York. President Truman, now re-elected, the strong man of the Cold War, awards Clay a medal.
It is meant for the American soldier, and above all, for our gallant airmen who flew the airlift to Berlin under every type of weather, under minimum safety standards, and some indeed gave their lives to the success of that effort.
The hottest spot in the Cold War is eliminated. Allied vehicles await the removal of the barriers and the signal for the dash to Berlin. With the opening of the gates, a new chapter in post-war history begins to unroll down German highways. Just 10 months and 23 days after the capital was sealed off from the ground, traffic is rolling toward Europe's #1 trouble spot. It's a day of triumph for a band of men in the airlift who kept Berliners eating while they were held in an iron ring.
May the 12th, 1949. The crisis ends as it began, without a shot being fired. At Tempelhof Airport, the children also get their chance to thank the flyers.
Jetzt kommen aus dem Westen die Laster, die Fernfahrer. Und interessanterweise brachten die zunächst einmal in riesigen Mengen Apfelsinen. Und ich habe dann zum Freund gesagt, jetzt gehen wir doch mal auch zur AWUS am Ende der Autobahn, am Funkturm, wo die eintreffen. Und vielleicht haben wir Glück. In der Tat habe ich auch gesehen, dass Apfelsinen eben hin und wieder zugeworfen wurden. Die waren damals schön noch eingepackt in Papier. Und einige hatten also Glück gehabt und haben auch welche auffangen können. Ich stand da, nichts bekommt mein Freund auch, und wir sind dann völlig niedergeschlagen nach Hause, wie so eben Kinder sind, weil das wäre die erste Apfelsine in meinem Leben gewesen. Dann bin ich nach Hause gekommen und betrat die Küche und dann habe ich riesige Augen gemacht. Dann standen auf dem Tisch eben 2 Apfelsinen und die waren aufgeschnitten wie eine Seerose.
When the airlift finishes on August the 31st, it has carried 1.7 million tons of fuel and food to the city. The rules of the Cold War are set. In Europe, it will never turn into a shooting war. Germany is split into communist and capitalist halves. The divided city of Berlin is where the Cold War began, and this is where it will end 40 years later.
After the break here on the History Channel, the cameras are rolling during the Pacific War as we take a look at the filmmakers who directed their lenses at the events that lasted from Pearl Harbor to the atomic apocalypse of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.